chapter 6, and there are 2 verses today, text 33 and 34. And it appears that 33 is on the board, so we can chant responsively. Kalevaram parushbis Chitva tate vrajau kashaha Dure shiptva vaya vasho Niadahan kashta veshtitam Kalevaram parau bish Chitva tate vrajau kasaha Dure shiptva vaya vasho Niyadan kashta veshtitam Kalevaram parashubish Chitva tate vrajau kashaha Durek shiptva vavaya vaso Niyadan kashta veshtitam. Please chant. Kalevaram parashubish Chitva tate vrajau kasam Dure shitva vavaya vaso Niyadahan kashta veshtitam Kalevaram parashubish Chitva tate vrajau kasaha Dure shiptva vavai vaso Niyadam kashta veshtitam. So the word for text 33, Kalevaram, the gigantic body of Putana, Parashubi, with the aid of axes, Chitva, after cutting to pieces, Tat, that body, Te, all of those, Vraja Akashaha, inhabitants of Vraja, Dure, far, far away, Shiptva, after throwing, Avaya Vashaha, different parts of the body, piece by piece, Niyadahan, burned to ashes, Kashta Veshtitam, covered by wood. In translation, Srila Prabhupada. The inhabitants of Vraja cut the gigantic body of Putana into pieces with the help of axes. Then they threw the pieces far away, covered them with wood, and burnt them to ashes. Purport. It is the practice that after a snake has been killed, its body is cut into various pieces for fear that it may come to life again, simply by interacting with air. Merely killing a serpent is not sufficient. After it is killed, it must be cut to pieces and burnt, and then the danger will be over. Putana resembled a great serpent, and therefore the cowherd men took the same precautions by burning her body to ashes. And text 34. Dayamanasya dehasya dumas chaguru shorabaha utitaha krishna nirbhukta sapadi ahata papamanaha. And the translation for text 34. Because of Krishna's having sucked the breast of the Rakshasi Putana, when Krishna killed her, she was immediately freed of all material contamination. Her sinful reactions automatically vanished, and therefore, when her gigantic body was being burnt, the smoke emanating from her body was fragrant like a guru incense. Purport. Such are the effects of Krishna consciousness. If one somehow or other becomes Krishna conscious by applying his senses in the service of the Lord, one is immediately freed from material contamination. Shrinvatam Svarkata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana. It's Bhagavatam 1:17. Hearing about the activities of Krishna is the beginning of purified life. Punya Shravana Kirtana. Simply by hearing and chanting, one becomes purified. Therefore, in discharging devotional service, Shravana Kirtana, hearing and chanting is most important. Then, with purified senses, one begins to render service to the Lord. Hishikena Hishikesha Sevanam, Bhaktir Uchyate. This is called bhakti. When Putana was somehow either directly or indirectly induced to render some service to the Lord, by feeding him with her breast, she was immediately purified, so much so that when her nasty material body was burnt to ashes, it gave off the fragrance of a guru, the most agreeably scented herb. Om Jnanatimrandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakha Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavan Ishvari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pramani Hari Priye Vanchakalpataribhyascha Kripa Sindhubhye Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Om Padaswami Iti Namine. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The residents of Raja, they cut the gigantic body of Putana into pieces and piled it up for burning together with wood. So the reason given for the burning of her body is not merely a cremation of the body, but rather, and this is from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says the lower class of men, the Vraja Kausha, they completely burnt Putana's body out of fear that it would come to life again. So there was a belief that was operating, and that is that the influence of a poisonous creature it could be nullified when the body was burnt. So, interestingly, this comparison of the body of Putana, which stretched for 12 miles, that's the length given from Sri Krishna Leela Stava, from Srila Sanatana Goswami. So that comparison of that body that's stretching for 12 miles is being compared to a serpent. And that comparison is being made because her body has to be hacked into pieces. And this is an interesting thing because usually a human being, if a human being is bitten by a venomous serpent, then often it means the amputation of a limb or part of a limb. That's usually what happens if a human is bitten by a serpent. So here, actually, the serpent itself is being cut into pieces. And now the comparison being made with Putana's body to that of a serpent is due partially to her use of poison, because that is how she was attempting to bring about the death of Krishna, or so she thought. So at her death, the cowherd men treated her as a venomous serpent, and they took a precaution, as Srila Prabhupada puts it, to burn her body to ashes, as would be done with a poisonous serpent. Of course, she had a very venomous nature, and we know this because she was actually engaged by Kamsa to kill all the babies that were in Vraja. So in fact, she had been wandering throughout all the towns, all the cities, all the villages with that purpose. That was her duty. So she was performing a very wicked duty, and we heard this earlier on in the second verse of the same chapter. So when all the limbs of Putana's body were burning, the smoke that was emanating from the fire created a very good aroma, and it's compared to a guru, so it's a very fragrant incense. And this is very interesting. And I thought to look at this a little bit, this notion of, or not notion, but the fact that there was this very greatly beautiful fragrance emanating from those hacked up limbs of Putana's body. So Krishna says of himself, and this is in Bhagavad Gita 7:10, he says, "I'm the original fragrance of the earth, and I am the heat in fire. I'm the life of all that lives, and I am the penance of all ascetics." So that verse is Punyo Gandha Prihitvayam Cha Rejas Chasmi Vibhavasal Jivanam Sarva Bhuteshu Tapas Chasmi Tapavishu. So Krishna is in fact fragrance and flavor, as is found in the earth, as is found in the water, as is found in fire, as is found in the air, etc. So that original flavor that permeates everything is Krishna. Just as there's a fragrance exuding from the limbs of Putana's body as it's burning. Now this fragrance indeed could be said to be Krishna by its beauty. And in fact, these are the words that were used. This is from Srila Sanatana Goswami in Sri Krishna Leela Stava. He says of Krishna, "And you made Putana's burning body spread a wonderful fragrance throughout the countryside." So Krishna, becoming very angry at her, took hold of her breasts, backtracking one bit, squeezed it very hard with both hands, and sucked out both her poison and her life. This was early on in the 10th verse. So Krishna is that original flavor that permeates everything. And he was present in that fragrance emanating from Putana's body as it was burning. Now, Putana's body, in fact, became sanctified by the touch of Krishna's mouth. So her body, in fact, is becoming purified of all sins. I mean, Srila Prabhupada used the word in the purport today as a nasty body. So Srila Vishwanath, he says that this purification of sin from Putana's body, it took place the moment Krishna began drinking from her breast. And that's the word, I think, in the second verse that we read today. There's the term Krishna Nirbhukta. So that's the moment his mouth came onto her nipple and he began drinking the milk. That is the moment at which the purification from sin happened from Putana's body. So Srila Prabhupada looks from a different angle. He looks from the angle of somebody becoming Krishna conscious or rendering service to Krishna. So Putana's service is described because she's presumably rendering some service. So we're going to read what shape her service takes. So this is the description of her performing her service. The fiercely dangerous Rakshasi took Krishna on her lap and pushed her breast into his mouth. The nipple of her breast was smeared with a dangerous, immediately effective poison. So this is the service Putana is performing, and that was in the 11th text of this verse. So this is interesting because generally the minute one applies one's senses in the service of the Lord, one is freed from material contamination. This is what Srila Prabhupada says. It's immediate. So as soon as the senses are engaged in service to Krishna, then one is freed from whatever material, I guess, functioning on the subtle plane is there. So, and Krishna explains this too. He says, if you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. If, however, you do not work in such consciousness, but act through false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. So this is from Bhagavad Gita 18:58. So as soon as one acts in Krishna consciousness, engaging one's senses in Krishna's service, then one is freed from material confusion or any kind of doubts. Because generally there's confusion on the mental plane. In fact, to make a generalization, and this is Srila Prabhupada from a purport in 1858, the verse I just read where Krishna is saying that if by working, when one works for him in consciousness of him, one passes over the obstacles of conditioned life. Srila Prabhupada actually says that one doesn't actually know what's to be done and what's not to be done. So actually, the picture that's being painted is that until that moment when one's engaging one's senses in service to Krishna, there's actually mental confusion. One doesn't know what the correct course of action is or isn't. And this is interesting because the minute the senses then get engaged in service to Krishna, it means that one becomes free to act. So it's quite an interesting point. And this becoming free to act is because Krishna is prompting from within and the confirmations coming from the spiritual master. So that mental confusion just falls away just by virtue of the facts of the senses getting engaged in Krishna's service. And in Putana's case, I mean, this is a complex thing because of the manner in which she's engaging herself in service to Krishna. She did apply her senses in the service of Krishna by having him drink her milk. So she's directing her being towards offering that milk to Krishna. Now, in her case, how did this work that, just what has been explained, that the minute one engages one's senses, mental confusion falls away? In her case, you see it getting expressed very loudly because she becomes, any doubts about Krishna's capacity immediately fall away, and it's very graphic in her case. And this is the description: unbearably pressed in every vital point, the demon Putana began to cry. Please leave me, please leave me. Now this is the dangerous Rakshasi who's accustomed to killing babies everywhere. That mental doubt about who Krishna is, it disappears. She's actually begging for mercy. Please leave me. Suck my breast no longer. So, and it says, perspiring, her eyes wide open and her arms and legs flailing, she cried very loudly again and again. So one could say graphically there, the illustration is that there's no more doubt in her mind as to Krishna's position. She was put into a completely helpless condition just by him accepting her service. She came to understand what Krishna's capacity was, without a doubt, very graphically. Now, Srila Prabhupada marks the beginning of life. So actually the beginning of being alive is that one becomes conscious of Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada marks that, he makes it like a demarcation point, that hearing about the activities of Krishna is a beginning of life that's free from doubts of knowing what to do and what not to do. So, and he quotes, there's a verse that he's using in this purport today to highlight this point. So he's quoting Srila Sutta Goswami responding to the sages of Naimisharanya. So the verse Srila Prabhupada quotes here is from Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.17. He says, Shinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridi Anta Stohi Adhadrani Vidunoti Surit Satam. So this is translated into, Lord Krishna is personally present in the form of transcendental sound. And that sound is therefore as powerful as the Lord himself. So that means that in the spot where Krishna is being glorified or being heard about, of course in an offenseless manner, then he's present. So in the same way, when his name is chanted, again, attentively and reverentially, then he's personally present in the form of that transcendental sound. And Srila Vishwanath, he explains that from hearing, so getting exposed to Krishna being personally present, hearing, when it comes to be with taste, that one actually is wanting to hear and actually properly hearing, then it can be said that one is hearing and chanting. There's a reciprocation going on. It's not that, one's mind is blocking off the hearing. That when the taste is developing for it, then one is actually hearing, one is actually chanting. And it's at that time that Krishna, being situated within, he starts to destroy the sins in the heart. So it's at that time. And that's that word abhadrani that was used in one of the texts today. So being situated within actually refers to one's remembering Krishna. So it's not merely that he's passively present there. It requires one's active interaction with Krishna, in the same way that one has to actively, reverentially be hearing. One has to actively be remembering Krishna. And that is when that destruction of sins in the heart is taking place. And this comes from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur too. And it's that active remembering, that active hearing, that it's a reciprocal relationship. So then Krishna is responding as a friend at that time. And he's looking to one's comfort. That's the word Srila Prabhupada puts, looking to one's comfort. So the description here of Putana, she's going through this kind of purification process, that her sins are actually destroyed, which is interesting because considering how much effort it actually takes to come to the point of actually hearing, actually chanting, actually remembering, in this case we're getting this immediately on the spot, her sins are getting destroyed. And in fact, her very nature, her nature is to consume infants. I mean, that's her nature. It's such a ferocious, venomous type of nature, that actually that nature's even dropping away. And it's all that's remaining is her service to Lord Krishna. So just by her interacting so closely with Krishna at that time, and all the history that's brought her to that moment, it means that that venomous part is getting completely destroyed. That urge to actually murder children is actually getting destroyed. And what's remaining is her service to Krishna. So this indicates something interesting, that the whole process of getting purified requires the help of Lord Krishna. It takes time to recover from one's, and it's called foreign nature. So even, Putana being in her body, the Rakshasi body, those are cannibals. They're basically man-eaters, and in her case, she went for tender flesh, babies. That nature is even described as foreign, because the real nature is that blissful nature, completely in harmony with Lord Krishna. So it takes time to recover from one's foreign nature. And hearing the glories of Krishna allows one to realize one's real position. So it's very touching that even with such a wicked, completely demoniac entity, in the guise of a mother, actually receiving the benefits of Krishna, that he's wiping away that terrible tendency she has to be murdering babies. He's wiping it away. So it's by the grace of Lord Krishna that one is able to go past whatever wickedness is there. I looked a little bit more closely at the aspect of remembering Krishna, and it's interesting because it's a very sequential process too. So this long stretch of time that's required even to come to the point of remembrance, or a long stretch of time before the wicked nature can be destroyed, or the foreign nature. It may be wicked, it may not be wicked, but a foreign nature is destroyed, where it's something completely separate from Krishna, not in harmony with him. And it's Srila Raghunath Das Goswami who describes that first one is meditating on the holy name. So there's a long period of time where one is meditating on the holy name, hearing the holy name. Then there's a later stage where one is able to meditate on the form of Lord Krishna. So it's sequential, and each is, progressive. So it's not all at once. And then after some time, one is able to meditate on the qualities of Lord Krishna. And then again, progressively, one comes to the point where one's able to meditate on one's service in relation to Lord Krishna. So it's a very progressive thing, even the remembering of Krishna. And there was also a breakdown by Srila Raghunath Das Goswami where he looked at how one remembers. So he describes it that for one can, you know, as best as one's capacity is, try to remember something in relation to Krishna, something. And then gradually over time, with the mind getting more fixed, it becomes possible to, you know, get settled in remembering Krishna. And that last point of, you know, truly being in touch with one's service in relation to Krishna, that's the part that's called samadhi, where there's nothing else. That's all that's present. You know, one's focus on Lord Krishna. So these were some thoughts in relation to this verse. If there's anything to expand her discussion, to expand the discussion. Jitendra Prabhu.
As you were saying, our previous nature is embedded, so it takes a while to recover from that. I remember a short phrase by Srila Prabhupada says, "We are haunted by our past." So that just came to mind in relationship to your expressing yourself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jitendra Prabhu, for sharing that Srila Prabhupada actually used that phrase of haunted by one's past. And in fact, one finds that that's the reality because everything gets exposed that's in the mind. So all those past impressions, all those wicked deeds one may have performed, it gets exposed. And then one has to actually look at it. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur particularly examines that, and he points to the necessity to experience remorse. It's actually necessary. Once it's getting exposed, one is remorseful about those actions one's performed or those deeds that have made up one's past. And that is the purifying part, that one actually experiences remorse. So, I mean, we're not hearing that Putin is experiencing any remorse. In her case, it's she's, you know, at least having to beg for mercy. So, in some sense, when one's recognizing that past, one is begging for mercy. One begs for mercy that one doesn't have to make those kind of choices or be at the mercy of one's mind ever again. Jitendra Prabhu.
Speak of mercy, the impersonalists don't cry out for mercy. Have you heard that before?
No.
Oh,
But
because,
that's
you
very
know,
nice.
they're not looking to the Lord because, you know, they don't believe in the Lord.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Mataji, for the class. One of the things that had attracted me about the philosophy and throughout all these stories is how the demons and sinful characters all along the stories getting purified after having a contact or being killed by the Lord, whereas in the Judeo-Christian tradition they have to go through a process of penances and going to hell and stuff and being fearful, and that's how it is manipulated. I love that part. But something that I don't understand, find it somewhat quite contradictory is that if Putana was purified just by the fact that Krishna was getting fed and just by the contact of his mouth on Putana's nipple and actually having a little of taste of her milk, why after she being killed has to be chopped in pieces, and and people was fearful of Putana coming back and do her thing, killing kids and stuff. If she was purified and she was probably sent to a better place.
So the question is, why is it that there would still be fear on the part of the Vraja inhabitants of Putana, considering that she was purified and sent to a better place, as you've worded it? Well, the inhabitants of Vraja are in that state of constant remembrance of Krishna. So they're constantly interacting with Krishna. And for them, it's their reality, there is no time when they're forgetting Krishna. So their whole absorption is with Krishna. So they're not thinking of him in any relationship other than the relationship that each individual Vraja inhabitant has with Krishna. So Mother Yasoda as her son, Nanda Maharaj as his son, the elderly gopis as their kind of son too, in a very motherly role. So that kind of meditation is, and only seeing Krishna in the relationship within which they're interacting with him, makes him oblivious to the fact that he has this position of great power and strength, and he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They don't see that aspect. So all they see is the child on a huge, what appears like a huge hill, because now her body is 12 miles long, a huge serpent, so it's very high up, and he's playing on her breast. So their relationship impels them to go and collect the child and see that he's free from danger. And there's the immediate danger or possible future danger of this 12-mile long body that appears very serpent-like. So they're not understanding Krishna's position. They're not understanding that he annihilated her, or that somehow she's actually been freed from all possible future sinful reactions because of her wicked deeds. They're not understanding that. That samadhi experience, that meditative, in close relationship with Krishna experience, obscures for them his position and his powers. So they're functioning within that relationship. So as a mother or a father, one has concern for the child. One takes the child out of danger.
So the so the interpretation of this purification comes from the narrators, comes from Prabhupada. Where's coming this idea that she was purified?
Yes, that purification process, Srila Sutta Goswami is quoted by Srila Prabhupada. Here the description is that the body gave off a beautiful fragrance, and that is actually understood by the Acharyas. So I've looked to Srila Prabhupada and also Srila Sanatana Goswami, and the expression by Srila Sanatana Goswami is particularly, you made this beautiful fragrance emanate from Putana's body. So the understanding is that it was his touch that permitted that fragrance, and also that an entity whose body is filled with sin and the reactions of sin, that entity is vile. I mean, there's nastiness. The whole body is nasty. One doesn't even want to come close. The fact that a beautiful fragrance was coming from that very same body, the understanding is it had to be that the sins were cleared. Krishna's touch made that body pure and beautiful, and a beautiful fragrance emanating from it. Of course, I did look at that part that Krishna's is the flavor and fragrance in earth and fire, etc. So there naturally is a flavor and fragrance there, but this was enhanced by Krishna's touch on her body. So Srila Sanatana Goswami particularly says, you made that fragrance come from Putana's body. So the analysis is by Srila Prabhupada, Srila Sanatana Goswami, that this is a result of the body being freed of the sins. So it may not be like, let's say, a body, it's a very sinful entity. So it doesn't mean that there's a stench coming from that body. But certainly on the subtle psychic level, one senses that and one wants to steer clear, because there's such a weight and ugliness to the sins contained in that body. So the understanding is natural that the sins had to be cleared for the body to exude a beautiful fragrance or to have become beautiful in some way. And that could only have come by Krishna having touched that body, since he himself clears sin. He's the only person able to do that. So, yeah, so it was through analysis.
Thank you, Mataji.
So we had a little shorter class than normal today, but this is what these two verses yielded. Well, thank you very much for your kind attention. I'm actually very grateful to get a chance to look at these verses in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and doubly grateful that you kindly interact. So thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.